Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Path of Exile 2 talk. Today I want to cover what I think is a pretty intimidating topic though, builds. Path of Exile allows for some pretty crazy concepts, like any class using any skill. You've got the massive passive skill tree. In Path of Exile 2, it may even appear more complicated because we've got stuff like dual specialization and multiple weapons being used at once. There's even new rules in the way that support gems work or how you even gem in the first place. So I wanted to make a video that kind of covers this topic in a beginner-friendly way that's less intense and hopefully because of that helpful. With that said, I want to explain two things we're going to be looking at as resources. There are some great third-party tools to consider even now before the release. While most of that information is lacking at this moment, take say the skill tree that we're looking at, which currently has some information on it, but a lot of it is just currently empty because we've literally not seen what's there. We can make reasonable assumptions, but yes, until release, it is going to be incomplete. The first thing then I want to show you is this giant passive skill tree. This was created by the Reddit user Buperino BR. I also want to make sure to highlight that they've asked others to help contribute to this project, so if you are interested in helping, check out this post and get involved. But then we also have this simple but fantastic website called PoE2 Skills, created to let us look at the skill gems and support gems to create a kind of mini build out of that. These are two resources that are just some of the best options we have at this moment to prepare or plan anything, but they can also be used for the purpose of this video to help understand the basics of builds. To keep things simple, I think builds come down to just a couple things really. Your class and thereby the ascendancy you pick, the thing that really matters, resulting in a specific playstyle or focus. What you go for your passive skill tree progression choices, the skills you run, the way you support them, the weapons you use, and the dual specialization swaps for that. Later down the line, the rest of the equipment might be considered, maybe even certain uniques, so they're going to be most impactful, but as a very simplified version of it, I think that's a good starting point. So let's break down those different topics we mentioned there to get a good understanding. This is the giant passive skill tree that we all use but start in different places, and it can appear much bigger and more intimidating than it really is. Really, you've just got three main corners. You have the strength corner here at the bottom left, you have the dex corner at the bottom right here, and then at the top middle, you have the intelligence. So if you're going to go a caster, you're going to find relevant nodes tied to mana or intelligence related things. So we're going to find lots of stuff in regards to spells. If you yourself want to pick a warrior and then use spells, you'd want to work your way through the tree up to this area to benefit from that. Or maybe go into the hybrid area, because in the area between strength and intelligence, we have the mix of the two. Same thing over here in this corner. This is between intelligence and dex, so we have monk here for that. And then the bottom middle here between strength and dex, that's mercenary in this case. So down here we'll find things tied to what would make sense for a mercenary, like say shrapnel. So logically, if I was thinking of playing a warrior, I would actually just start here, and then I would work my way down in here to be a more stereotypical warrior if that's what I wanted. For example, at the end of this area, we have some stuff to do with that very concept. 20% more damage against heavy stunned enemies with maces. So while classes and PoE are a lot less about the abilities tied to them, they're more about the unique passive skill tree starting point here, and then their ascendancies. You will see that lots of these nodes are simple small bonuses, like plus 20 to armor in this case, or in many examples, plus 5 to any attribute of your choice. But you'll also know that there are some bigger ones here that have noticeably bigger improvements, right? 15% increased armor, regen 1% of your life per second, plus 10 to strength, all from one single point spent on this bigger node. These are considered notables. On this website, on the left side, you have a bar where we can actually search specific stuff or even filter by these. So if we filter by notables, you'll see they'll get highlighted like so. Notables are going to provide the biggest relevant increases in general, and so we generally plan a path to get towards something of importance, like say you really want to do this heavy stunning thing with maces as a warrior, maybe you're going to go Titan as your ascendancy. So I'm planning to reach Skull Crusher. What can I do on the way that's going to be relevant to that? Getting some more armor for survivability purposes seems to make sense to me. Maybe personally, I'll run a two-handed mace and then a one-hand weapon alongside a shield to benefit from that blocking gameplay that the warrior has. So I could pick up Defender's Resolve for that purpose on the way too. Now, do I want to come through here into Polished Iron? Or do I want to go up here, down here, and go towards these nodes instead? In the case of this, we're looking at Reaving. Increased attack speed with one-handed weapons and dexterity bonuses, as well as Impair. 25% increased damage with one-handed weapons, and also you got a 10% chance to maim on hit. You'll know that as we're on the way to these special notables, things here are going to make sense for that. They're both related to one-hand weapons, right? So these smaller nodes also are, just smaller increases, 10% increased damage with one-handed weapons as you go up there. Now let's stop highlighting the notables and highlight a different kind of larger node you'll see that aren't actually ones you have to pass through smaller nodes relevant to the thing, like what we saw with Impair. These ones will just be easy to access and very impactful indeed. These are called keystones, so let's highlight a few of them and find a relevant option. So how about this one? This one, as you can see, like I said, you don't have to pass through nodes to reach it. It's just standing there on its own. This is a keystone, something that's going to be incredibly impactful, but also has big negatives with it. These exist, you might take them, you might not. So resolute technique in this example, your hits can no longer be evaded, but you can never deal critical hits once you have this. This example then would really define a build that benefits a lot from never dealing with, evades, but it's also going to have to be a build that doesn't build any crit at any point because it would be, as you'd see, useless. So these are definitely not worth taking instantly the moment you come near them, and especially in the opening days if you're experimenting with builds, I would actually recommend you avoid these unless it's obviously relevant and useful for your build. For planning though, I would actually make use of that search bar quite aggressively. You'll find it in game when we're going. An example of what I'm talking about is if I want to use axes in particular, well, if I'm not sure what to build, I want to find what's relevant to axe stuff that we know at least. And at the moment, as you can see, it's literally only 4. They're highlighted in red for us in this case. So what's this node here? It's 10% increased damage with axes. And down here at the bottom left, we have a few. We even have a keystone, Giant's Blood. You can wield two-handed axes, maces, and swords in one hand, but double attribute requirements for the weapons. Pretty hefty. Otherwise, for axe, we have maximum rage while wielding an axe, or 50% chance to gain onslaught on killing blow with axes. So if you're wanting to use an axe, you'd search something like this and then plan your route this way instead. What's in between there and here that's going to be relevant? One little thing that I want to highlight, just like Path of Exile 1, you're definitely going to want to pick up defenses on the way. And from everything we've seen within the game, it definitely seems like the boss is going to be hard in particular. So defensive options are going to be very, very good to pick up in the skill tree. So maybe I would aim for what the core of my build is going to be, such as axes down there, right? But on the way, I would make sure to pick up every defensive relevant tool, such as an obvious example of Relentless for that extra armor and life, as well as the strength benefits. Big picture, we're expecting to have over 100 points to spend. I keep hearing the number 120, but I definitely don't want to state that here as concrete just yet. But that should give you an idea of how many points you're going to have, letting you specifically aim for the notables that are on the path you're planning. To net as many of those as efficiently as you can, if it obviously serves your build. Now, since we're talking about it, we'd better talk about dual specializations and weapon swapping to allow for that. As they define it, dual specialization is new to Path of Exile 2, right? It's the ability to allocate some passive skill points to 2 different weapon sets at once. Then they engage whenever the appropriate weapon or skill is used, so making a hybrid build is encouraged. The idea is that if you press like a frost ability, the game will instantly automatically swap to, say, your frost staff to then cast that skill, which on that frost staff when equipped, you'd previously set up the passive skill tree to be suited for frost skills. Then as you swap back to lightning skills, you press a lightning skill and it automatically equips the lightning staff you're holding and reactivates the lightning related passive skill tree setup you chose. It's a really cool idea, but it's definitely going to add like a big level of depth to the game. So you're essentially swapping between 2 versions of the skill tree based on what skills and weapon you're currently using. But there's another big topic we got to talk about before we start talking about skills and support gems, and that's ascendancies. They're essentially subclasses, but they become the main class that you are. In this early access, you'll pick between 2 options with clear differences, and these will lead to new playstyles and focus on specific approaches, whichever you choose to lean into. It's important to know that these really set the tone for your build though, so picking the right class for the right ascendancy to lead into the playstyle you want to play, that's important. So maybe you started as a sorceress, but then you ascended to a stormweaver. That's now what you are. And so lightning, shock, and so on, that's going to be a key part of that plan. Otherwise, why did you pick stormweaver? Therefore, I would at least recommend you know which ascendancy you're going to aim for the playstyle that's going to encourage before you get to the choice in person. Alright, so let's now talk about how skills work in this game, since it's different in a couple important ways from, say, the original. We're going to be referencing the website we mentioned at the start, poe2skills.com. So, in short, your skills are actually these gems you socket in. So if I want to use Shockwave Totem, the ability, I need to have the skill gem equipped. As soon as it's equipped, I can use it. And so yeah, I could use this on any class. Meanwhile, support skills are what are socketed into that skill gem to change the benefits and perks of that skill. So in the case of this one, Shockwave Totem, this raises a totem that slams the ground repeatedly, damaging enemies nearby. What I've got as an example here is supporting this with added fire damage. This means the totem's attacks will now gain the fire damage element, but as it says, in exchange, it'll deal less cold and lightning damage as a cost. Something simple as another option would be area of effect, making the area of that slam from the totem larger. So I think this is actually a lot simpler than it might first appear. You have up to 9 slots that are going to be 9 skills, and these are going to have a potential of 5 supported skills in them. But things have obviously changed and there are some rules to think about. So obviously the big thing here is skill gems are now separate from the gear you're wearing. In PoE 1, your gear, your chest piece maybe, that had slots in it with colours and links. This by comparison then is a lot simpler and a lot more intuitive. We have the main skill that we're going to actually put in. Let's just pick a random one. So we got bow shot here. And then as before, it has its slots, which we'll need to build up and link successfully. This is kind of like a finished version of it. We're not going to be immediately able to go this deep into it with all 5 support slots, but 1 or 2 to start with is very reasonable. So with bow shot, it's a projectile, it's just an attack with a bow. Let's give it some additional accuracy, 20% more accuracy rating. Let's give it brutality. This boosts the physical damage of the attack, but comes at the expense of all other damage types. So let's just make this a very physical attack, a bow shot. We're enhancing the physical damage of that, and we're making it more accurate. As you can see, we have the skill, and then we have a green and red gem. In this case, we have a red and a blue for the Shockwave Totem. That's because, yes, they come in different colors, and that represents the different attributes. So green is obviously Dex, red is Strength, and blue is Intelligence. The attribute type does have some basic requirements, like you'll want +5 strength to be able to actually use this. That gets tackled through your equipment, and as we've seen the passive skill tree, where there's a ton of nodes in there that are going to help you reach these requirements. But in regards to these support gems, obviously they're amazing, but they're limited because of that. So each support gem can only actually be equipped once. So see how I've given my Shockwave Totem the fire damage? I couldn't also slot this into bow shot because I've already got it equipped here. There can only be one. As I've shown you though, you can have up to 9 slots for all the different skills. But do remember that we're going to be using multiple weapons and swapping between them, comboing skills together rather than just spamming our best 1 DPS ability. We've been shown a lot of great examples of that, like say the mercenary freezing a target, then swapping to armor piercing rounds to shatter that frozen target. Or something like the concept of covering a target in oil first, then burning it so it burns more effectively as a follow-up. Creating a nice roster of skills for that kind of idea then seems a good plan. A skill or 2 suited to single target DPS, a skill or 2 suited for AoE clear, a setup and then explode, a build and a spend, maybe some control or utility for movement or defenses, some auras, whatever. So it's going to be fun to play around with a ton of different skills and find out what works best. With the way our weapon swapping works though, some skills do need specific weapons to use them, like how we saw with bow shot, it requires a bow to use this skill. So any class can use any weapon and any skill, but you can't use bow shot if you're not holding a bow. But that could be a good way to look up the kind of skills you're interested in. So in the case of bow shot, maybe I'm like a ranger and I want to use other bow related stuff. We can search in bow. And here we see skills that are tied to that. So there's bow shot, here's snipe that requires bow, electrocuting arrow requires bow, escape shot for bow, gas arrow, lightning arrow, so on and so on. So if you're playing a ranger, you just have a look at the different bow related things, at least to begin with. I do wonder how it's going to turn out in the full game. Is a sorceress always going to find themselves using 2 staffs for different casting purposes as they've shown us? Or will it be more varied, like a warrior using sword and shield and then swapping to the big 2-hand mace? Or maybe even you've got 1 melee weapon and 1 ranged weapon that you swap between for the purpose and utility of that. So we'll have to experiment and see. But yeah, I'll leave it there for today. I hope this was simple enough to understand and helps you have a starting point if you are new to PoE in general. I do want to say that there's absolutely nothing wrong with experimenting and letting things be messy. Like if you want to really avoid guides and do your best on your own the first time, it should be fun. But on the other hand, if it is intimidating and you do want to start following someone else's plan and their build from the beginning, it's all good. I just think that understanding how it all works, it goes a long way for understanding why someone runs this or that, or if you want to make adjustments, you have that kind of ability. We'll all be learning fresh in many ways anyway, and that's a big part of what's exciting about this new version of PoE. If you guys have any extra information or advice then, let us know in the comments. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.